Hello, ladies. Okay, we live in a day and age where it's really, really easy to have a side hustle. What I'm doing right now, I love this. Like, this gives me life. I'm not anti side hustles, and I'm not even saying if you have a side hustle, it's a bad thing. Like, obviously, I think it's a great thing. It's a way that I can bless my family, it's a way that I can use my gifts, and I get to interact and chat with y'all and have awesome, amazing, beautiful conversations with friends of mine that have a lot of wisdom to share with you. So, I'm not saying it's bad, but I want to say your family is way more important than your side hustle. I think that we live in a time in a society where everybody always says, like, what do you do? What do you do? How do you provide? How do you provide for your family? Or how do you serve your family? Like, what are you doing? And I realize a lot of y'all are single. I guess it still matters in the aspect that maybe one day you want to be married. And I think it's very important to keep in mind when you are married, especially when you have young kids. My kids are still young. My youngest is 8, but my oldest is 14. So now I think is a time where more moms throw themselves into working. Like my mom, when we were home, my mom was home, like growing up. She thought that that was very important. She had a working mom growing up and and now mind you, this was like the 80s and the 90s, and even into the early 2000s. So I feel like that was kind of normal then for people to say, it's good for you to be home as the mom. It is good for you to be home with your children when they are home. So my mom did have a lot of side jobs. She would work at a church or she would do interior decorating, but she was almost always home when we got home from school at 3 or, and she would take us to and from our sporting events. I have 3 sisters, and we all played a lot of sports or extracurricular activities. And she wasn't always home, but 9 times out of 10, it was the norm. And we sat down as a family to have dinner every night. And I feel like that was the norm in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. I don't think that's the norm now. And I think our society's not better because of it. We're definitely worse because of it. I just want to give you permission, especially if you're a mom of littles. It's okay to just be a mom. Just being a mom is not anything you should look down upon. That's amazing. It is so good. And I even say that first when someone says, well, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'm a mom. I homeschool my 4 children and I take care of them. I school them. I educate them. I also run a podcast on the side, or I do speaking on the side. That's what I normally say. Not because I'm ashamed of what I do on the side, but it's on the side. I love this. I love having this chat with you now. Oh, I forgot to open this up. So if you have questions or comments, feel free to put it on. I'm still getting used to doing these live. I forget. Yeah, I'm still adjusting to YouTube. Thank you for your patience with me. But this is a secondary thing. I do this on the side because I do believe that my primary vocation as wife and mother is taking care of my wonderful, amazing, beautiful children and my husband and my home. And sometimes I do it pretty well. Other times I fail at it, especially when I'm dealing with my health stuff. I fail at it more than I don't, but trying to keep the main things the main things. Yeah, like there's so many different side hustles. Whether you're selling oils, or I feel like it used to be like Tupperware back in the day, but now I guess there's, I don't know, some cloth thing one of my sisters got into for a bit, cleaning products. What else is there? The face stuff, the beauty control, or I don't know, whatever it is. There's so many side hustles where it's like you can make a little money on the side. Or one of my sisters, what is she doing? She's selling stuff on Amazon. I didn't even know that was a thing. So she sells all these random things on Amazon, and it's great. I am not knocking her for doing it at all. It's a way that she could bring some extra money in. She also works for Apple part-time. And I have a sister who literally teaches workout classes. Well, it used to be in her garage. I think now she has like a little studio in the house, but she teaches workout classes. She does it early in the morning before the kids go to school. And sometimes later in the evening, she'll do boot camps. Like I have another sister who bakes bread, like legit beautiful sourdough bread, and it's amazing. And she sells that. These are all great. I do a podcast. I chat with y'all. I occasionally go to events and give talks. What I love about this is I'm able to do it on the side. It is a side hustle, and I think it's important to keep it as that. Like today, I was planning on recording a podcast this morning, and then life happened. I had to get the house tidy. I had to finish schooling the kids. I had to take some kids to a friend's house. I had to book some things online. Like it's just part of life. But I don't know. I think it's good to keep, I don't know, whatever it is. I think that we are often told like our worth and our dignity should come from our work. And that's just not true. That should not be where we find our worth. There's this great, I just got this book, and there's this great Chesterton quote in it. I've had people talk about this forever, Theology of the Home. I never read it, but I've heard of it for years. I just bought it. And I love this. And I've heard this quote before. I've heard it worded differently, but I'm just going to read it from here because I think, I'm hoping they're quoting Chesterton correctly. Because I've used quotes before and I'm like, I don't think that's actually what he said. But yeah, so our home is meant to be a foreshadowing taste of heaven, right? Like our home, like making our home a place that our children see what is true, good, and beautiful is huge. And that needs to be our primary vocation in the state of life in which we are in. And our world does not value it, but I value it. And I want you to know that I value it. And I think it's great you're doing what you're doing. And yeah, and Chesterton thinks you're great. So, okay, I'm just going to read it. Okay, so this is what Chesterton said. The place where babies are born, where men die, where the drama of mortal life is acted, is not an office or a shop or a bureau. It is something much smaller in size and much larger in scope. And while nobody would be such a fool as to pretend that it is the only place where people should work, or even the only place where women should work, it has a character of unity and universality that is not found in any other fragmentary experience of the division of labor. Home is, as Chesterton says, small in comparison to a business or office, but enormous in terms of impression it makes and leaves upon us. Home by its nature is meant to be a foreshadowing of heaven. Okay? Our home is a beautiful place. And there's another quote by William Shakespeare that I love. When I was at home, I was in a better place. And I think there is something to what we see that is beautiful. And one of the things we love looking at on Instagram is beautiful spaces and beautiful homes. And as we're changing seasons here, I live in the north, and it's fall, and there's something to like wanting to be in curled up by a fire, reading a book. We had a bunch of candles lit last night as my husband was reading The Hobbit, and the kids had blankets over them. And there's something nice about putting a sweater on and just, I don't know, just being home. Matt has his favorite, I should have gotten a copy of the poem. My husband's favorite poem is something about, there's so many, the loveliest place to be is at home with nowhere to go. And it's this guy basically describing his evening. And he's like, please tell me we have no place to go, but we can just stay at home. And I think of, with Lord of the Rings, I think of when Samwise goes home, and it's like, and their tea was on and they were waiting for him, and there he sat with his family, like his adventure ended. And there's something beautiful to like coming home, right? To a homecoming and being greeted with a cup of tea and a meal and breaking bread together. Like it's a beautiful, sacred place. And I think that there's not enough inviting homes today. When I lived in Ireland, in Ballybofey in particular, so I lived in Ireland for like 3.5 years. And I remember people inviting me in to their home and giving me a cup of tea, like, oh, come in for a cuppa. And you go in, and it wasn't about the tea, but there was always tea and a biscuit. But it was, let's just sit and be together. Like, come in, sit. I'm going to look you in the eye and have a conversation with you. How are you? What have you been up to? What's the crack? You know, and it's just that let's look each other in the eye and connect one human to another and just be. I think everybody can think of someone that's like this, right? We all have a friend that we're like, oh my goodness, this person embodies this. Peter Kraft was just on Pints with Aquinas with Matt, and he talked about, who was it that he met? He was talking about some saint that he met, and he said, he was the only person, or when he looked at me, I felt like I was the only person in the room. He was so present in that moment and just there. And I felt that way with John Paul too. I never sat down and had a cup of tea with him. I saw him in a crowd of, I don't know, 20,000, 50,000 people. But he looked at me for one split second and I felt like he saw me. And people talk about Mother Teresa is the same, like looking at you and seeing you. And if this is who we want to be, if we want to be seen, then shouldn't we do this for others? Shouldn't we see them? And I think if we're truly going to see other people, we need to keep the main things the main things. And our family should be a priority. It should be a main thing. I have four amazing, wonderful, beautiful people. They are not perfect, not a single one of them. All flawed, sinful human beings, just like me. And we make mistakes, and our family is by no means perfect, but we really enjoy spending time with each other. And I think it's because we create an environment for that. We make it so we can spend time together. We try to do things that everyone enjoys, and we try to be there for each other. And I don't know, I think sometimes when our kids are little, watch me do this, watch me do this, watch me do this. And it's like, oh my goodness, like, give me a break. I don't want to watch you do the same thing that you've done 50 million times. But there's something beautiful in that they want you to see them dive into the pool, or to see them jump on a jump rope, or to jump really high on the trampoline. Like, these are precious little beautiful moments. And when we affirm that in our children, when we watch them, we're like, okay, I see you. It affirms who they are, who they were created to be. We are being Christ to them in that moment. And I think it's such a gift. Okay, I'm just gonna start reading comments. I'm not good at like reading and chatting with y'all, so I love that. I am a super selfish young mom. My career was my priority. Now I regret it. I tell the young brides I come in contact with, it's okay to be a mom, and encourage them to put the family first. Oh, God bless you. Thank you so much, Jackie, for just your honesty. And honestly, when I was a young mom, when Matt and I first got married, I was working full time. And I was actually working full time until we had even as we had our second child, I was working full time. But I was working full time with my kids. I was doing ministry and they were allowed to come with me. I was a youth minister and we would lead youth group nights, and I'd have a baby strapped on me. And then I was a supervisor for Net Ministries, and I would go on soup visits, and I would have one-on-one kind of like spiritual direction with each of the girls and check in and see how they're doing. And I would have a different person on team be in charge of my child, each child actually. So sometimes when it was a baby, they could be with me, but other times I'd hand the baby off to someone else and I'd be present. And I remember feeling like I was failing them because I couldn't be there for them enough. And at the end of the couple of years, I remember almost everyone said, this year I didn't need a supervisor so much as I needed to be part of a family, because they were living in a foreign country. And they're like, I got to be a part of your family. And that was such a gift. Like being with your children. And these people now are married with children of their own, but they still talk about what fondness they had of my family. And so I think like if the Lord's calling you to do something and you do need to work, this is not meant to be a video to shame women for working. Like if that's the boat you're in, work. It's okay. But I think keeping your family as a top priority over your job is huge. And I think that we need to keep that in line, right? Yeah, it's okay to be mom first. Dr. Carrie Gress is awesome, very humble. Oh, yay, that's who this book's by. I'm like, I don't know who that is. I literally just started it. I love her as a person. That's awesome. Wishing all homes become foreshadowings of heaven. Amen. Wouldn't our world be such a better place? Oh, Aisling, loving the Irish accent. Well, I do like to do a good Irish accent, don't you know? So, no, I often think that's one thing you Irish have right. I don't know that it's still done so much, but I think there's something about, I'll put on a kettle or I'll put on a cup of tea. Australians do it too. British do it too. I think it's a cultural thing. And Americans do it where it's like, oh, come have a cup of coffee. But I feel like a cup of coffee is quick and rushed. It's like, here you go. Okay, moving on. Where I feel like when you purposely have a tea and biscuits, you like sit and take a deep breath and chat and interact. The Ant, Mary Expose is a great book. Okay, I'll look into that. Yes, the gift of being present is huge. And with 3 kids under 3, I have to say, I fail at being present all the time. Amen, Heather. I fail at being present all the time too. I had 4 kids, 7 and under, and I was not present all the time. And this isn't me trying to shame you for not being present. It's if you can be aware that you're trying to be present, that's huge. I have this girl who's helping me right now tutor my kids, and she is in her very early 20s, and she graduated last year and she just wants to be a mom. Like that's what she wants to do. And she just wants to have kids and start homeschooling them. And I feel like she just very much is like, this is the mission I want. I want to be a stay-at-home wife. I want to be a homeschooling mom. And it's beautiful and amazing. That was not me when I got married. I admire her a lot, and I love that she has that and that desire. But um, but that wasn't me, and that's okay, and that may not be you. But I think that there is something to knowing the ideal, right? Knowing, okay, yes, it is good to be present with our kids and not. I think the main thing, especially for moms who feel pressured that they have to go back to work. In Ireland, I got 90% of my pay for an entire year when I had my first child. Like I didn't have to go back to work. Or no, maybe it was 90% of my pay for 6 months and then like 60% of my pay for the other 6 months. My maternity time was massive. And I think that's more of a European thing than it is here in the States. But we have chosen to sacrifice. Like we have chosen to just have one car for the majority of our marriage. So I could stay home with the kids. I know not everyone has that choice, but I think especially Americans, I think we say, well, we have to have two incomes because of our life, because of our lifestyle. It doesn't work. And it's like, well, maybe it could. Maybe you don't need those nice of cars. Maybe you don't need two cars. Maybe you can sacrifice. We chose to live in a less nice area so my husband could ride a bike or walk to work, and then, or I could drop him off, but we just had one car, and we made that work for a really long time. And it was a sacrifice that we made to spend more time with our family. And I think whatever your side hustle is, keep it as a side hustle. Don't try to make it your main thing. I think it's good to have something where you can bring in money on the side. I'm not looking down upon that. Like, as I said, this podcast is my part-time job. I joke that I employ 3 different women, and I joke between the 3 of us, we have a full-time job because we are all homeschooling moms that are really busy, and we just give enough. And I love it. My heart comes alive when I chat with y'all like this, but especially when I do my in-person interviews, and I just hear women's hearts. I love it. I really, truly enjoy it. And I do think that the Lord's calling me to do it. But it's something that I'm always willing to put on the back burner. I don't want to be the next greatest whatever, because I want to be the best mom. And that's so much more important. Like if we want to change the culture, it starts at home, and it starts with our family and taking care of them. Okay, Heather says she's in Canada. She moved to a small town so she can stay home for the time being. But we'll definitely have to get back to work soon. Yeah, but even just for that time being, no matter how long or short that time period is, Heather, your kids are so blessed to have that time with you. That's huge. I have friends that are moving here for the same reason, because the cost of living is just a lot cheaper, and they can do it and have less money and not need to work more. We have friends in really expensive areas, and they need to have 2 really big incomes to make life work. And even then, I feel like they're barely making ends meet just because they live in a very expensive area. The amount of women who say, I hate working, but have to keep my job since we need to afford blank. Usually it's an extremely superficial thing, like their cabin or their boat or their Disney World trip. Unfortunately, I think you may be right. But that's not everyone. And so that's not why I'm telling you, I'm not saying no women should work ever. Everyone needs to stay home. I'm not saying that. And I'm also, but I'm saying your family is way more important than your job or your side hustle. Ideally, I think it's a part-time job in an ideal world, or someone that's very flexible. I have a friend who, oh gosh, I have a bunch of friends who work, and their job works around their kids. Some of my best friends were like big jobs, but their husband and them tag teamed well enough. But then they've eventually gotten to a point where it's like, no, okay, that can go. And I don't think it has to be our second home that you're trying to keep. But I think oftentimes it is a really nice car, or it's to cover your mortgage. Like, you probably are in a bigger, nicer house than maybe you need. We had 3 kids in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And by God's grace, we made it work. We have much more space now. But I don't regret that time. I'm thankful that I had that time with my children. So yeah, so that's it. I just want to encourage you, if you, and don't just listen to what I'm saying or what people in the chat here are saying, but really take this to prayer. Like, turn your computer off, shut it, just pray and say, all right, Lord, what is best for my family right now? What ought I be doing? And I guarantee you, he's going to say, love me, love those around you. Maybe you're single. Maybe it's loving your roommates. And maybe it's like, you know what? We're all working and we're all busy, but we should be there for each other. So you say, you know what? 3 nights a week, we're going to have dinner together and you have fellowship. That's huge. Or maybe you're like, okay, we need to sit down and have dinner as a family, or I need to leave work early and be with my kids as soon as they get home from school, or whatever it is. Ask the Lord, how can I change something in my life right now to make my family a higher up priority? I'm not saying if you have this amazing job and you're the CEO of a company, you need to quit and stay home. But just ask the Lord, like, what ought I change? And just step down a notch. You don't have to be the best at something. Yeah, and you don't have to prove that you're just as good as every other guy in your office. I think often that's what it is. And you're like, no, I need to prove that I can run everything at home, spin all the plates, and be number 1 at the office. Yeah, pray about it and ask the Lord what he's asking of you. And I will never regret not doing an episode and being with my kids and watching them jump on the trampoline. I won't, because that's my priority. And yeah, I just challenge you. Make your side hustle, not your main thing. Keep your family as number 1, because they are the most important. All right, guys, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, share. I'm not working harder at this. As I said, this is a side thing, but you can help me. Share it. Write messages below, things that you want me to cover. I just want to thank all of my Patreon members. Thank you so much. That's where I get a lot of topics that you guys want covered over there on patreon.com/amongthelilies. There's a link here. Thank you so much. God bless. Have a wonderful day. Bye.